You know, the great thing about the fact that we bop our heads along to the song every time is that that part's not on the video. And we have an intro
but it's
screen
It's
that
more
breaks
for me.
But it's such a banger that
It
we
is such
bop
a
along
banger.
anyway.
All right, well, welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host, Ryan. Today, I'm joined by my lovely full cohort of co-hosts, Alex.
Yes.
And Alex.
Also, which one?
and Wyatt.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the squad. We're talking about an actual topic today. We had a run of games we had to talk about, and in particular, a lot of fun things to bring up in the last few episodes. So we're going back to basics now, and we're taking some of Brett's topics that he's had scrolled away for a little while for us to look at. And the first one is we're going to talk about toxicity in multiplayer games, because I think
It is part of it.
this is the part
Wait,
that I
I thought we were
lead
talking
with,
about
Brett.
the album by System of a Down.
Oh yeah.
I am
For
I am
sure.
perfectly in the mood for this. I played a little Iron Banner earlier today.
That's always a mistake. I'm
I
sorry.
need the shader that they've locked behind a reset.
Alex, you have a problem, and that's coming from me. You have a problem.
And then we're gonna jump into Brett. Your sensationalized title version of this is the death of the social video game.
Yes, of course. Very
Clickbaity title.
clickbaity, philosophical. You can name a book that, and people
You
would
could
buy
name
it.
book that. In fact, I wonder if someone might have, and if not, I hope they do after this episode.
Oh yeah.
Could be one of us.
Who
One
knows?
of you guys like writing?
Or even better yet, from the greatest scholars of our time, the title of a Reddit post.
Oh my God! Stop the presses.
Oh.
But yeah, that's the reason. I mean, yeah, it is just a clickbaity title, but it does also obviously pertain to the point that a couple of the topics we're going to talk about ultimately like become, and that's that you in the olden days of 2007. You'd be able to hop into matchmaking in Halo 3 or something on Xbox Live, and the lobby you get put into a lobby full of people that
What
you
a
could
wild
hear.
concept!
I know
Lobby?
a lobby.
What
like,
is that word? I
Uh,
don't understand.
I actually don't know. We lost the definition because it's been such a long time since anyone's experienced what a lobby is. But yeah, in the olden days, you used to go into COD or whatever, and you'd get put into a lobby if you're playing multiplayer, and you'd hear the $2 microphone compressed voices of fellow adults and toddlers alike
Love the
talking.
squealers.
The
And it was
microphones had this incredible, it was amazing technology where everyone sounded exactly the same. No matter what your
yes.
actual voice sounded like in real life, everyone had the exact same high pitch. It's kind of impressive.
Mhm.
I have a feeling that has to have been like because of compression, but it really did give like a nostalgic sound to that
Definitely,
era
yeah,
of
yeah.
multiplayer games.
Absolutely.
To the point where in Modern Warfare 2019, I believe they had a setting to where you could put a filter on
Yeah.
in-game
What?
voices in voice
Yep.
chat to make it sound like a Modern Warfare 2 lobby.
I
Oh
think
my
you're right. I
God.
totally forgot.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
which I had on, and I didn't really notice if it made a difference because I never had it off. But it
That's
was
one
What
of
a
those
great
things.
filter.
That's one of those things that's like a nostalgia setting. Like
Exactly,
Assassin's
yeah.
Creed Mirage did the same thing where they have that awful blue filter that they had in like
Oh my
the first
God.
couple Assassin's Creed games as like a toggleable option.
That's pretty cool, though.
It does truly look terrible.
It's
I would hope so.
terrible.
It would be wrong if it didn't.
It looks like when someone tries to do a cool looking like video game montage or move or something on TikTok, but then they
Mhm.
put on all of these awful filters so you can't even see like what they're doing. It looks like
Exactly.
that. Great.
But yeah, and it's we don't really have that in too many of the big multiplayer matchmaking games that people play nowadays. And there are both positives and negatives to this, but the point is that that aspect of social gaming, I guess mainly in like competitive or first-person shooter type games, it's kind of dead now.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up first-person shooter games as like the mouthpiece for this, because I think they, in the past, were the games that often exemplified this, but now I think we do see a lot of that moving into other genres of like, not only are first-person shooters losing those elements, but most franchises that are multiplayer have moved away from a lobby approach, often for good reasons, but for reasons that I feel like there are a better counter to than just getting rid of everything. Because something that comes to mind as like a positive part of this is a lot of people complain about fighting game lobbies in newer fighting games. In particular, I think in a lot of the Arc System Works games like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue, they have an actual like multiplayer lobby that you can use, and that lobby is a little bit weird. Of like, you have your little avatar, you run around. You guys have seen it because we did it in the Guilty Gear episode.
It
But
was
that
kinda
does
weird.
get you part of that like social element back, of you can run up and then like re-challenge the same person and do stuff like that in a lobby setting that I think feels really good in a lot of fighting games.
It's weird, but it's fun and worth it, I think, because it's just like it's kind of goofy, and Guilty Gear is not meant to be taken seriously in the first place. So it's part of the fun.
Watch out, Brett. The fighting
I
game
think
police are going to come after you.
I think it's kind of
so
fun
scary.
for games like Guilty Gear as well, though I kind of found it a little cumbersome when we were playing, that it does sort of introduce an element, like those games are inherently one-on-one.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the core gameplay is one player versus one other player. And they kind of create an environment where you can have other multiplayer elements
Yeah.
to include your friends or whoever, rather than just being one-on-one.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I also think like what a lot of games have, like why a lot of these games have moved towards this, I think, is because of and I think MMOs are a thing we'll have to look at a little bit further down this discussion, because they exist in like a weird, entirely different space than what we're currently talking about. But I think in first-person shooters especially, there's kind of a conflict between ease of use and the necessity of being social. That is a funky spot to be in.
Because we'll do a small and an immediately easy comparison. I don't know if this is the case anymore because I haven't played it in a while. But thankfully we have our very willing guinea pig that just plays Halo Infinite on his own no matter what anyway. Do you still not have a like between game lobby in Halo Infinite? Why, or did they add that?
No.
Okay. I wasn't even asking like as like a knock against the name. I just genuinely was not sure because it's been so long and they just added a bunch of stuff.
No, it's still like you see yourself or whoever's in your fire team, and then everything is just magically done in the background, and then it just launches you into the game.
Yeah, and then you get to look at the blue and gray hexagons for 30 seconds.
Excuse me, they have exactly one new loading screen now. They change it for every season now. So you know what? You can just shut up.
Okay. But the example that I started with is that like for me this the nostalgia and my connection is for Halo Reach, because that was the first Halo I had that was like in the middle of being supported while I was playing it for the first time. And it would be fun in a interesting sort of way to come home from school and after or before finishing my homework, going on
naughty little Brett.
I know. Going on and joining a lobby full of people, and you can see like the game, the map is loading or it's finding more people, and while it's finding more people, you could see like what rank they are, what color their armor was, and then if you gave it a sec to load, you could see exactly what like their Spartan or elite looked like just their whole entire character model would just be visible to you because they knew customization was a big part of that game.
And don't forget those so clever usernames.
Oh, of course. And the clan tags, which had to be even more creative because there were only like 3 or 4 characters. And like, as like when people got like locked in to be in the same lobby, then you started to hear people who had mics and stuff. This is the first fork in the road to positivity and negativity because you got people saying stupid stuff that's really funny or just like doesn't mean anything, or you have the guy who just has like his family of 85 people in the background all screaming at each other and cooking meals.
The child that
just totally unaware that their mic is unmuted.
Exactly.
You gotta have someone blaring System of a Down too.
Just the blasting
toxicity.
I mean, my favorite was always the child that yells so loudly that their parents come in to like scold them, being like, "Why are you up this late? You need to quiet down." And then it's just like a whole argument. Oh my god,
it's so funny. Yeah,
it's so good.
And then like you get the more negative stuff where it's like that enables people to start saying like really mean things before the game's even started and stuff. And ultimately most of that is just useless, nothing information for a game like Halo Reach, which we'll I guess talk about more competitive games in a bit. We'll get to that. But I don't know. There's just an atmosphere of being able to feel like you're just hanging out with a bunch of other guys who are doing exactly the same thing as you are. That is not really. It's not as readily apparent as it is as it used to be.
Yeah, which is interesting too because I think Halo Reach is a really good example of this because it was also like my multiplayer game at the time, like. Mm-hmm. Little Ryan sitting on his Xbox playing, or my dad's Xbox playing Halo all day was a common sight on the weekends. So, yeah, Halo Reach especially I think something that really helped with Halo Reach too is it was one of the first, like, I think Halo games that had aspirational things that were cosmetic stuff of like you would want to show off your career progression in the game as you were going through it in multiplayer, and you would see someone with like a special helmet or something that's hard to get or just very rare because you don't often see people. And like it may have been the case that Halo Reach was very, very grindy in that term of like I think most people that play that game never even reached to the max ranks because
I did not
how much time it took, even if they played it like every day. I think the math on it is you had to play it all the time, but
ironically they never reached it.
Yeah, never reached it, which made it really cool when you saw someone who did. And I also think it's just something Bungie in particular was, and to a degree still is, very good at, because I think that's one thing that Destiny has kind of kept intact, as much as
it's a very similar lobby.
Enjoy Destiny PvP very much as an actual thing. Like, it's just not my jam. I do think it's really fun to see, like, oh, you see all the Guardians in this lineup at the start, and you get to be like, oh, look at these cool armor sets that people have, what they're rocking, and you get the bit of the social showcase of what's going on.
Well, it's the reason that the Halo fan base, especially back like when Xbox Live was really in full swing, it's why it's such a, like, still to this day, after everything that Halo fans have been through, it's still such a strong community because of the roots that had kind of taken place back then, when like there were just so many, like there was file share, there was like tons of crazy like community creations, there was like the theater mode and that kind of thing. Like
you could show off, like you could share your videos and like theater stuff. So that's how like early machinimas were often done, was just in the theater mode.
It was like its own like early prototype alpha version of a social media platform that was just like inside of a video game.
I think it also is just a case of, I mean, we're kind of going on the Halo train here, but I think Halo does really exemplify this because of the time frame of it, like popping up and being one of the first big multiplayer shooters and getting better over time and more advanced as time goes on. But I also think it's a case of like, if you look at people playing the game and the other technology coming up around the same time, that was the start of the internet basically, and stuff like Red versus Blue, Arby and the Chief and whatnot, all the Halo Machinima series that were super popular way back in the day. I think had a huge like social effect on the game of like encouraging this sense of community.
Yeah, you don't get, like, you just say whatever you want about the state that Rooster Teeth is in right now, but like it's undeniable that Red versus Blue and like all the stuff that started it's like that's part of the internet Bible, basically. Like, other things just would not exist if Red versus Blue didn't blow up like it did, and Red versus Blue wouldn't exist if you didn't have voice chat in Halo, if you didn't have a way to communicate with other players like just so easily. And like, you know, nowadays, I like, to a degree, it's not really that much more difficult to find a match at all. If anything, it goes a little faster because now you don't have a lobby to load into in Halo Infinite. But it really, like, and it doesn't, that to me, it doesn't feel like it matters to 343 because they have more important things to worry about, and the game didn't launch with that as a part of it, and it's a weird thing to add. But that not being there really is one of the bigger parts of why, like the gameplay of Halo Infinite, in multiplayer especially, feels very Halo. But like, there's just something about the feeling of playing Halo Infinite that doesn't feel like playing Halo used to, because you don't have that lobby system. And even in Master Chief Collection, I mean, you have a lobby for when you're loading into a game, but you can't communicate with people. You can see whatever emblem they're using, but they're all like really easily earnable stuff for the most part, or you get it from the store with the points that they throw at you for doing literally anything. And it just doesn't have that same level of interaction. And I think even in Master Chief Collection, the first time that I realized that we were moving away from this was before I even thought about video games, if you can call it intelligently at all, was when Master Chief Collection came out, and after the first like week of it just not working at all, and finally getting into games and just being booted out of a lobby and having to like, not like, it just, hey, Master Chief Collection not automatically searching for another one of the same game right after you finish a round of that game was mind-blowing to me in high school, because I was like, this is ass. Like, this is garbage. Where did it go? It's such a simple thing, and now so many other games are like this, to where most people probably don't even consider it a problem, but like, what happened? I'm not with the same lobby. I don't get to try to see if I could be better than the guy that was kicking my ass last time, or get revenge on the one dude who kept teabagging me every time he was killing me, or keep kicking the guy's ass who I was kicking his ass last game or whatever. It gets re-randomized because now you get booted out of that lobby and thrown into a new one.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty sure it's like that in Infinite too.
I have just recently been playing a weird amount of the more recent Modern Warfare 2. Bought that game at launch, played it a bunch at launch, forgot about it, have been playing it in the last couple weeks. Anyway, that game, the lobbies are so weird. First, I noticed it because the menus are dog shit and I hate being
They're
in them.
terrible. They're so bad.
Awful.
And it's the same deal there, where like I'll be in a match and maybe there's an option to keep playing with the same match, but 99% of the time it throws you into a totally new lobby. And it takes forever.
Yeah.
It throws you back to that ass menu.
Because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like you know, what's been the thing that's really kind of, what's the driving force that's removed traditional lobbies like this? And there's kind of two things that are hanging in the back of my head. One of them, I think, warrants a much larger discussion, but another one, I think, is that it's it's almost like multiplayer gaming has kind of gotten away from, which is kind of what we're talking about, kind of like gotten away from like you're talking with everyone. Everyone you're playing with is this large community, and it's much more focused on your friends that you're playing with, right? Because there's a lot of options now of like um whether you're on PC or whether you're on console, of like communicating with your friends and sharing things and showing things and that kind of thing. But like in terms of the other people that you're playing against, there's nothing. And I think it's just with certain like trends of oh, what kind of games are popular, what kind of multiplayer games are popular. It's just kind of pushed like the social aspect of games in that direction, where it's a lot more focused on the friends that you're playing with and other people that you're playing against.
Yeah. I think that's really fair. I also think Discord and other things like it are likely a huge part of this. Because I remember way back when people would often default to, especially playing MMOs, TeamSpeak was like the go-to for any of this. But TeamSpeak required some setup. Like it had a little bit of setup you had to do. You had to have like a website that someone had that would give you their TeamSpeak address and whatnot. Like it wouldn't be as easy as getting a Discord invite to hop in, and you would have to kind of vet what you're doing to make sure that you're not going to get scammed or something. So there was more of a barrier of entry to communicating outside of the game, and I also think that Discord's ubiquitousness in terms of like being such a popular thing and the go-to for everyone. Like if a game has voice chat, I think a lot of people are likely to just not use it and use Discord instead. Even if it does exist, because it's a platform they're familiar with rather than having to get used to it on a game.
I was going to say, I can kind of play devil's advocate in this scenario because that's me. I never played games growing up that really were. I didn't play a ton of multiplayer games. Almost never had a microphone. So like once in a while I'd go over to my friend's house and play Halo or Battlefield or something, and I'd hop on a microphone, but that wasn't until later. So I'm not tied to the idea, and like
Well,
I'm
well,
much. Go ahead.
No. Please finish.
I was just gonna say I'm much more of a person who has always been more interested in talking to the one or two players I am playing with than the whole lobby. Though I like the option.
Yeah. Well, because I'm in kind of a similar boat where I didn't play any video games for a lot of my childhood, which I think kind of shapes the kind of games that I play now. But when we did get like a Xbox 360 and stuff in the house, the rule was like you can play online, but we don't want you interacting with other people online. We don't want you like
Don't become
interacting
radicalized,
with
sweetie.
weirdos. Yeah, like that was kind of that was the rule, and I was like, okay, so
don't start yelling racial slurs on Call of Duty.
exactly. So like it's like I never talked to anyone. I always muted stuff because I wasn't supposed to, and so I always knew that it was there. And the older I got, the more I saw of it. The more I kind of experienced it as it was as it was still there, but. I think for me it was like, yeah, I would catch the occasional 10-year-old getting yelled at by their mom on the other end or something, but for me it's like I really like I was there and I definitely experienced some of it. I don't share the same kind of nostalgia that a lot of people do for it, but I totally understand. I mean, going back to watch like a COD lobby compilation is great. It's so much fun.
It's amazing, and you just don't
Well,
get
I
that
can tell you
anymore.
for sure that as of a week or so ago, you can still log into a COD lobby. And at least in game, the lobby is kind of lame. But at least in game, you can still get called slurs.
Yeah,
Yeah, that part hasn't changed.
The
Which is
COD, the COD Slayer speedrun.
Well, because there's proximity chat now in a lot
Yeah.
of like battle royales or survival games and that kind of thing, and
There's
in things
proximity
like
chat and Call of Duty.
yeah, well, whatever it's called in like regular COD multiplayer, where like you kill someone and you get like a 3 seconds of them yelling into their mic that you killed them. Like that's great.
It's great.
That is great. That
It's
is
awesome.
amazing.
And they
get
can
better
never
than
fit
that.
in their full slur in like that 3-second span, so they're always
No,
cut up.
yeah.
It's
awesome.
like
it's just like you just like find someone doing something stupid and then you kill them and you just you're like, oh come on, you. And that's just it. That's right before, and it's the best.
Yeah, it's just like
so amazing,
and it just
Yeah.
gets cut. Oh,
I also
it's
think
like a
something
perfectly edited video.
something along the lines of what we're talking about here that's important too is the death screams are super fun. This is something that BattleBit does as well. That's just super fun to hear every time it happens.
Yes.
But I do think a lot of the reason that we don't see as much of that is this sort of like extreme toxicity of certain games. Like there's a line between like fun swearing where someone goes like, "Oh come on, what the," and then cuts out.
Yeah.
Or someone swearing like pointedly at people and doing it in a way that is a lot more offensive. And I think that's really part of what kills a lot of social interaction in games, is because just humans have a tendency to remember negative things a lot more than positive. Of like, if you have one bad experience, the 10 good ones aren't going to make up for it unless they were way like above whatever your average was. You're going to remember that one bad one that's going to color the rest of your day, basically. Of like, if you had one really bad match and got sworn out the entire match by your teammates or something, that's going to color your day, basically.
I quit playing Dota the first match I was in because
Good.
I was
Good for
so
you.
bad at the game that people were yelling at me to just quit playing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, I think I will.
I mean,
You're
that's
probably
exactly
the only
the problem.
person who's ever actually quit after being told that.
Well, I wasn't having that much fun anyway, and I was like, oh, you know what?
Like,
Maybe
they're
I
not
will.
already in on it.
You don't want to have fun playing Dota.
Is that even
Yeah.
possible? I'm kidding.
I mean, I am also intimately familiar with that because I played League of Legends for multiple years competitively. I had a team and everything. We met through the game and whatnot, and it was super fun to have that like social experience. But at the same time, like you hit a point where no matter what, if you're doing a competitive team game or something, you're going to hit the limit of your team's ability to progress unless you get serious. Which means I think most teams fall apart when they hit that point, because they're like, some people may want to actually start trying to go pro or something, and some people may be like, well, I'm fine just competing in like local tournaments or something. And because it's team games, that tends to be like the moment where things fall apart. And I think that happens a lot, but at the same time, there's like this mid-ground but before that point where people can be very social and also have like a shared goal in mind that's really fun.
It's super fun.
Yeah, I think Hell Let Loose is a good example of this, Brett.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
A game that encourages that mindset with random people without the need to be super coordinated.
Yeah.
Hell
like
Let
just
Loose,
having
I
a
feel
game that
like the
encourages
voice chat has much more of a point than Halo or COD as well.
Definitely,
I mean, it's very useful to be talking to play the game.
Yeah, and this is when this is what I meant before when I said that we'd mention this, because at like Halo and COD, and I mean even like Battlefield, because it just makes like the tactical, like, quote unquote gameplay like so approachable that you don't really need to like all the time be giving call outs in those games. Like if you do, I mean it'll always be helpful to a degree, I guess, but like
it's not super
you don't need it.
necessary.
No, yeah. They're arcadey enough where you can have more than enough fun 99.9% of the time, even just playing them alone without any communication.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, too, that like half the time when I'm playing one of those games and somebody does call something out, like, oh, they're standing on point A, I already know that. Like, the game communicates
the game
well.
exactly. But things like Hell Let Loose, or like, I mean, I guess BattleBit, it's more necessary, I guess, because it's like it's less for callouts and more for like the stupid bullshit of like people screaming like they're actually
It's more
dead
just
in real life.
BattleBit has like a different solution to this, which is to just not have an environment that encourages like racial slurs and whatnot getting thrown around because of their. I mean, we all talk about AI in games being a wacky and scary thing, but BattleBit has like a voice thing that will detect if you're basically using language that is too offensive, and will instantly ban you if it detects that.
That's really cool.
It's a good use of AI in games.
Exactly.
What you get a man a room full of guys just listening to voice chat. Oh, that guy. I think that guy said the N word. I'm gonna ban him.
Because it works for a game like BattleBit where not like most of the servers are gonna be like the 156 versus 100 versus 156 player games, and it's just like no amount of human like moderation is ever going to catch everything in that. So it makes sense.
There's also a visceral satisfaction that comes from someone saying that, and then you see the little pop up in the top left that's this person has been banned from the server.
Yeah, and it says for what reason too.
It says for why.
Exactly. But yeah, so BattleBit solves it in that regard while still keeping that social aspect to it. And like we said, Hell Let Loose still has that aspect to it, and I think it's saved by the fact that it actually is the kind of game that does have like human moderation, and is pretty successful most of the time in doing so, because the servers are mostly all like owned by just like players. They're just like admins that run discords for their like faction or whatever for the game. And so they usually that tends to get taken relatively seriously. Like if someone is, getting like Patreon money to run their server, like and pay that every month or whatever, it's usually like they usually don't just like let it sit and die. In my experience, that's at least how it used to be in Battlefield 4 and how it is in Hell Let Loose now. And so if someone is being a bad commander consistently but always taking the commander role, like you can do this other wonderful thing that I think is just on all the servers, that I might get some flack for this, but I think this should be in every multiplayer game. I don't know where the vote kick has gone. We need to bring it back, because oh my god, it's certain kinds of games, and now that we're getting to the more competitive side of the discussion, because I actually, this wasn't even a part of why I came up with this topic a while ago. I just realized that was a thing in Hell Let Loose right now, which is why we're going on this tangent. It's such an important part of Hell Let Loose. We're like, okay, this guy's griefing. He's just being an asshole, and it is ruining our team's chances or the other team's chances to the point where it's not a fun game anymore. And it does take it's like 19 or 20 people out of a team to vote kick someone in order for it to go through. But so you have to be serious about it. But every time it goes through, it's usually because the team was serious about it, because it's really hard to get 19 random people.
And I think that works a lot better for games like Hell Let Loose. I do think the reason that we don't see the vote kick in games like a like 5-person co-op thing or MMOs as often anymore is, though they do exist in a lot of MMOs, I think it's often just because of parties of like, if you have a 4-player party and the 5th person is like attacked on random, it can feel really, really bad. And it happens probably more often than we'd like to think, of like a group going, we're just gonna keep kicking the random until we get someone really good, right? Or they're gonna mess up once and we're gonna kick them and all that. And a lot of this also depends on like the culture of the game. If that happens a lot more often, I think, in games like Call of Duty and other competitive games compared to MMOs. That problem, it does exist in MMOs, but I don't think it's as common as those other games. But
I think with MMOs as well, there's enough like matchmaking that happens before you actually get in the raid or whatever, that like if somebody's being an asshole and only wants the highest eye level whatever, highest gear, best player, they just wait till they get that, rather than
or there's just like a limit on queuing for the thing that you need to be,
or that too.
Like that solves the problem. So, yeah, I mean, my experience with that is largely related to Final Fantasy XIV, which is in general just a more positive game experience in the social aspect than a lot of other MMOs I've played. But I've never run into that issue of like vote kicking being a problem in that game. I think the only time we've ever had to vote kick someone is someone's like game bugged out and they couldn't leave, and we're like, "Hey, can you vote kick me so I can get out of this thing?"
Ah,
Damn.
neat.
I think the most recent game that I've played that had a vote kick in it, and I've never seen it used once, was Sea of Thieves. And to be clear,
Huh.
I've played that game solo quite a bit, and I've played it with randos from time to time just to like see what would happen. And it's
Why
like
when those PvP
never-
PvE servers drop? Oh, got a good time.
dude, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. That's it. That's the whole story.
Yeah, that was the
Okay.
I feel like
half
I'm-
of that.
no, that's it.
I feel like I'm in the same boat with Alex here, being most of my early years gaming were spent solely on single player type deal. So I don't have too much experience in the early days of multiplayer. Other
Like
than,
you didn't
what we played
spend
together, which is
hours every day playing WoW on your dad's Mac.
Wow.
no.
Are you even a real gamer? Jeez.
On the opposite side, I do have a fairly fond memory of one time. Shoot, what game was it? I was playing Battlefield, Bad Company with a friend of mine, and we were both hanging out in like his parents' basement or something. And obviously, that's even in multiplayer. Though I didn't have my PS3 over. It's a single player game, so to make a multiplayer, one of us had the controller and the other one had the microphone.
Nice.
And
Nice. I've
so
done
one
that
person
before.
was solely devoted to trash talking.
That's
Maybe
really
not even
funny.
really trash talking, mostly just making an absolute fool out of themselves
Yes.
on the microphone the entire game, while the other guy just also makes a fool out of himself playing the game.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, that's I used to do that with Halo 5 a bunch when my because
Yeah, well,
no
that game
split
isn't that
screen.
great, so
Exactly. No way to play that game with two people who are hanging out in a living room. So when that's what my one friend would do. We'd switch off on who would get the mic and who would play the game. And because he was more of a socialite and I was better at pushing the buttons, he usually got the mic for longer and I'd stayed on, and he'd like just the amount of just improv you'd get from that is just great. And you just there's
I'm
no
pretty
other
sure
way you get that
everyone in the
specific.
server muted us, and it was just doing it for
Absolutely.
our own entertainment.
God.
Good way to practice your improv, you know?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Instead of
if it was me
jump in the Halo
nowadays, I'd
lobby.
get in this match and be like, "Oh, what is this friggin' 12-year-old doing with this like bad Southern accent or something?" Like,
Oh my god.
His bad Southern accent. I'm pretty sure he grew a potato on his family farm and then stuck it right into his headset, and that's what he used as a microphone.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I locally source my Wi-Fi.
The power of the Turtle Beach potato.
Oh god, I had a pair of
It's a
turtle
headset
beaches
made out of
around
an
that
actual
same
turtle.
time.
No, yeah, that's the exact same headset I used.
They broke.
As
They
Turtle
sucked.
Beaches tend to do. Yeah.
Yeah, just all out of the blue. I'm like, oh, it doesn't connect anymore. Okay. Oh, trip down memory lane.
I think because we're to keep on the now that we're in the more competitive, maybe not competitive, but communication with your team is more imperative to the gameplay than just like running around and getting the highest amount of kills by yourself.
Mhm.
That's more so what I meant by competitive, I guess, because there's definitely like again in Halo or something you don't really need to communicate, but in something like Rainbow Six Siege, you definitely need to be communicating with your team, otherwise nothing is going to happen and you will all be slaughtered.
I would still argue in Siege specifically, and a lot of other sort of modern games like it, I hardly use the mic when I played that game. I mean, like, I definitely did once in a while, but there's so many in-game communication options just about, like, pinging things and whatnot that you aren't necessarily at a disadvantage as long as you are communicating using those tools.
Yeah, but that's I don't know. I would kind of disagree with that because a ping in Rainbow Six Siege is just a ping. It's just the little
Fair,
yellow thing,
fair enough.
and it doesn't. You don't get the
Apex
there's
Legends bunch of
yeah,
options.
exactly,
Not a
exactly.
contextual ping.
Exactly. If it said like, "Oh, there's a Jaeger poking out this window, and that's why I'm pinging it." If someone's not saying anything and they just ping a window, it's like, okay, well, I'll keep an eye out for it. Like I got that level of information,
Yeah, fair
but I
enough.
don't know what's gonna happen. But I do like that. That is also another thing is that more games nowadays do have like built-in. You can just press a button in a direction and it will contextualize what kind of like thing is there that needs to be pinged. Which is definitely that's like a point for not really needing the old school social things anymore because some games like Apex and to a degree Rainbow Six do that stuff pretty well. But I remember the game that made me think about this in the first place at all was soon to be rest in peace good old Gundam Evolution. My poor pride and joy. They the game never had. I don't think it ever had voice chat. I don't think it has voice chat. I don't think it launched with it. Never did, which is very strange for an objective-based Overwatch clone where communication with your team is like
Yep.
necessary.
Boy,
So
is
already
it a real Overwatch clone.
it's uh like so already you have something that's making people not want to take it seriously. So ranked is very difficult to get into because now you need again those devoted teams of people that you have to make up beforehand. You can't really hop in or solo queue and like jump in with the other guys who are talking and help them with callouts and stuff because you'd have to stop and type it out into the team chat, and that's just so much more clunky. I don't think there is a ping in Gundam Evolution either.
Really?
Which yeah, if there is, it certainly wasn't good enough to warrant me remembering it existing.
Yeah, the Gundam Evolution was wacky because it
I
also
feel like
didn't
there
have like
was one, but it was class specific.
yeah, the classes weren't
Yeah.
real. Like they were there wasn't a distinction, but there was also no way to communicate, so you couldn't really do team building. But you didn't really need to because the
Exactly.
suits were all kind of capable on their own. But sometimes you just run up against like a composition that was a nightmare for yours, and you would have no idea how to fix it. Like
It's yeah.
maybe if there was
Um,
voice chat, that would be something you could work around. But
Exactly, because
I
it's a team-based game, and that's not
played
having that is huge.
I played very little of that game and found it kind of pushover easy, so I never even felt the need to communicate because it was just like, oh, see a guy, kill a guy, see a guy, kill a guy. Oh, match over.
Oh,
it got
Now,
sweatier a couple weeks in.
It got sweatier because the people that took it more casually dropped off when Overwatch 2 came out. And after saying they wouldn't. And at some point I think halfway through its existence, which was one of the legitimate nails in the coffin for me, is they removed all chat in the text chat, so you can no longer talk to people across both teams
Did they ever
anymore.
explain
a
why?
simple GG.
So their explanation was as I feel like what you would expect is just to limit toxicity, but I don't like is toxicity me joining into a game with my username being uh one of the special attacks from the shows, the shining finger, and then someone it has this huge speech that goes into the startup for the attack, and it's so cheesy and stupid, but it's super memorable, and so I like it made me so happy to get into a game and everybody picks what suits they're going to use, and people from like other teams or my team would like take this, my love, my anger, and all my sorrow. Like type it in all caps in the
Aw.
chat. Like a bunch of people would do it. It made it so much fun, and we do like I'd see like, oh, this guy is also a total dork, and his he named his username after like another character that has a quote, and I'll like make a joke out of it to them or whatever. And once they took that capability out of the game, it totally killed it for me because it ruined the community aspect. It ruined the social aspect of the game that already had a really frail team play aspect to it when you weren't playing with a pre-made group of friends.
Yeah, I feel like for that game in particular too, the death of that community aspect must be a huge hit because that game, from what I played, I didn't feel like it had that much going on for it gameplay wise. But Gundam's fun, and Gundam has a bunch of big fans. Like,
Exactly.
I would play
to
it if
capitalize on
people
it.
played it just because it's a Gundam game.
Yeah,
And
there's a reason that Battle Operation 2 is still going on and Evolution is not. Of like,
Yeah.
Evolution never did the best job in catering to Gundam fans and making non-Gundam fans understand what's good about it. Of like, Battle Operation 2 at least has everything like to the proper scale, so it feels like you're a big robot stomping around an area. Whereas Gundam Evolution is like, yes, you are technically these like massive multi-story robots, but the environment is all just scaled to fit the robot, so it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Which I think was a lot of that of like it just was lacking that appeal for the Gundam fan base to stick around beyond the people that already enjoy hero shooters. And I think the overlap between hero shooter fans and Gundam fans is a lot smaller than just Gundam fans or just hero shooter fans.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're talking about games that like 2% of us have played. I'm sorry about that, but we can move on to more popular ones after. But Battle Operation 2 is mentioned, and I do have to say that it definitely has the fan base by the balls because they know exactly what we want. They somehow they do the impossible and they put a new mobile suit in every single week that has a full like unique animation set if it's a whole new model or if it uses parts from an old one and it at least is like a totally different like class or something and it has a whole like fully fledged different loadout and stuff. But even in Battle Operation 2, like you're limited to hotkeys that when you like push like a direction on the D-pad or whatever the keyboard command is, and then you can scroll down a list of like good job, nice one, move to objective A, I'll pick a support, like pre-typed messages in. And there's no voice chat in that game either. And that even more than Gundam Evolution is the kind of game where like if you do not have team comp, not only are you going to lose, you are going to feel like some sort of crusade needs to be carried out against the other team in real life because like it's so frustrating to have that much of a disadvantage.
Yeah, it's also
because the other team's in a
complicated
voice chat
comparatively
together.
of like,
Yes.
because it's part gacha game. You may not have certain suits, certain people may not have them, so you have to like swap each other around or stuff like that, or you're working in like objectives that are spread pretty far apart, and your mobile suits are pretty slow in battle operations. So
Very,
if you're not already in the area, you're not going to be able to help, and you need to do things like get out to repair and stuff like
yeah,
that.
that game feels much more like driving a vehicle all the time.
Yes.
I think I'm thinking of the wrong Gundam game, but you guys remember when Barbados was broken? And
No, yeah, that was
that's
Gundam
Evolution.
Melee would
Evolution.
just
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Battle Operation 2 is not a ticking time bomb and has been around for like 5 years or something by this point, and it's also the second one. So I'm not too afraid of it disappearing like Evolution will very soon, and I think almost exactly a month as of the time we're recording this.
I think when Battle Operation 2 disappears, probably Battle Operation 3 will replace it.
I sure hope so. And
fair assumption.
the things that are missing from like the social aspect make me worry sometimes that people will just drop it because it's just not. It does not follow any of the like Western multiplayer social game conventions that we all have been brought up with by this point because it's not a Western game at all. But it makes me a little bit worried sometimes that if they're so willing to cut off Evolution support, that they may just do the same thing for Battle Operation. That would make me a little upset.
Yeah. I do want to circle back to something you had mentioned earlier, Brett, where you're talking about Shining Finger and the moment of like everyone typing the thing in chat. I think that is another thing of like having a sort of shared thing that people can get excited about. And Gundam Evolution did that by like being a Gundam game, and you could name your character, and so you would have like I think all of us that were playing that game had pun names
Yes,
of
we
like
did.
Shining
Of
Finger and then
characters.
Brighter Noah and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just funny pun names based on the shows and the mangas. But in a lot of things, it's
Parboiled
not super,
Azabel.
yes, this is like in a lot of
Yes.
games, it's not super possible. But it does remind me of stuff like this is swinging in the far other direction of specifically Dark Souls PvP.
Absolutely.
Dueling
Absolutely.
of like
Oh.
the etiquette and general surroundings of like PvP in the Souls games. Which is funky because I haven't done much Elden Ring PvP. I think just because it's less focused of a game for that. But back in the era of like Dark Souls, I'd play tons of like Dark Souls dueling in the like designated community dueling arenas where everyone would put down their summon signs that meant you wanted to duel. And you would have like etiquette of duels. You don't use your Estus, so you're not gonna use your flask to actually heal. Or if you do, that's free reign for both people to do it, and you're gonna go until you run out, type thing. So yeah, there's just this. It's fun to have that like sense of a community that is just a bunch of shared rules that are not enforced in any way, but
Yeah.
you can like flip the switch on someone if you do like something funky against the etiquette rules. That's then suddenly leeway for everyone to dogpile on you and
Yes.
throw you out of like patiently waiting from the PvP and whatnot.
And
Which is fun.
that's one of those rare cases where just because of the kind of games that FromSoft games are, like at least the Souls-like games that have PvP, the lack of like specific social interaction tools is like
Almost a
fine because they
benefit because of like
It's- yeah, 'cause
gestures
they-
and whatnot. People come up with
exactly
different
they give
ways
you
to.
yes, they give you so many other options. Like you don't have to say anything. All you need to do is dress up like the Giant Dad in Dark Souls 1 and invade somebody as Giant Dad, and they know exactly your business. There doesn't have to be any verbal communication at all. They know that some absolute tomfoolery is about to happen because you are going to be unkillable and you look a certain type of way. Rip Alex, I guess.
Oh,
um, and I
I just realized I swapped us back to the other scene because those 4 people had stolen your image from last time. Norman
awesome.
Rockwell.
But since like I said, that works for like 90% of FromSoft games that have the built-in PvP. The one game where it doesn't work for that I wish it just doesn't work because they don't have gestures, they don't have as many communication tools. It's just Armored Core 6 has such weird multiplayer like just absences of tools that you'd expect in a game in 2023.
I mean, to be fair, I do want to specify with Dark Souls PvP, almost all of the like success of that is not related to FromSoft of like anything that they
God,
in
no!
particular
If anything,
did.
they sabotaged it. If anything,
It's the
my
community
God.
working around all of the limitations that existed, and then I think Armored Core is just a game that is you're less capable of doing that.
It's because
Well,
you go.
Oh no, go ahead.
The build crafting is like so much more involved, and you can name both like your pilot character and your AC, and there's like the amount of customization is such that you can appear as the Lancelot from Code Geass or something, as close as you could possibly like recreate it or whatever, and people who know what that is will be like, oh, awesome. I have like he's going to limit himself to a specific loadout that might be bad just to cosplay as this one thing, so I get it. But like there's too few of the pre-typed like good job or I want to queue next like options. Like I wish it had a regular text chat. I wish it had a vote kick for the lobbies because some people do really stupid stuff way too often to be able to get away with it. And in order to deal with it, you have to end the lobby and make a new one. It's very rudimentary for a game this new, but
Well, while we're on the train of games that kind of don't have a lot of social social tools, but you can kind of work with that. I think a really interesting game that kind of has its own little unique space in this entire discussion is Death Stranding. Because
absolutely,
it is such we're gonna however you feel about the game, right? Because it's right down the middle with how people feel about it. But it has the most unique or one of the most unique like social experiences I've ever seen. And it's something that you don't really get a lot out of unless you really like dedicate your time to the game. It's super, super interesting because to quickly explain it for anyone that doesn't know how it works. There's no lobbies. It's not really a multiplayer game or anything like that. But when you build things, when you're building like bridges to make routes easier, you're building, zip lines or whatever the heck, it can show up for a lot of other people in their game. And so something that you put down or something that you create can show up for a lot of other people, and they might really find that useful. There's been so many times where I'm like trying to make a trek across a certain really rough terrain, and then I'm out of ladders. Someone already has a ladder down across this ravine I need to get across. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So you can go over to it, you can use it, and it feels great. And then you can like it if you want. And then the more likes you get on the structures you build, the more that kind of plays into your character's progression. And so I remember it was like me and a few other people were basically building this giant road that connects one major settlement to another major settlement. And we were all putting in because like you can put down the blueprints for something, and then you have to kind of add resources to it over time to actually build it. Other people can come over and contribute resources to it. It's so cool, but no one's ever actually talking to each other via text chat or anything. You have no idea who like you don't even have like a username from the other person or anything.
You do get
just
usernames.
Oh, you do? Oh, you do. That's right.
It tells you who built the thing, which is cool because that means the way that the game actually has like on the back end some stuff work is you'll continue to see people's things if you've seen them before and like them. So as you're playing the game, you'll get more stuff from the similar people, and you almost have like that. Oh, like I've worked with this person to build some of this stuff, and it's very cool.
And
but there's still this sense of like distance from everyone that makes it very intriguing.
Yeah, which I think for Death Stranding especially, again, it's a similar situation to Dark Souls where like you don't like having easy ways to communicate with other human beings is completely against the point of those games, and it would be like thematically against it in a way that From Software and Kojima they simply will not stoop to dealing with.
But it's almost like I think Death Stranding is the perfect example because I think it is the opposite of the From Software situation, where Death Stranding very intentionally left you with a very specific set of tools to enable that type of community stuff of like when you walk into the settlements you'll get all these pop-ups of like little messages that people have left on the ground that are you can't like type them out, but you'll see stuff that's like good job for making it here or stuff like that. Or just like a smiley face or something. And then in From Software, you've got the messages that are actually left that, of course, are generally leading to your death.
Or dog.
Yeah, there's a lot more intention put into them in Death Stranding. And especially the way that, like, when you're going through the story in a section, you don't see the other player's stuff, so it feels very lonely. And it's often harder. And then when you've gone through that section and, like, reconnected whatever's in that area, you then open it up and you get all the multiplayer stuff working then, and you kind of see this big change as like roads and whatnot are put in.
Yeah, and it works itself really well into a lot of the story and a lot of the themes of the game as well, which is it makes it feel a lot more impactful when it doesn't feel like this just completely separate system. It all kind of feels like it's building to something, which is really cool.
Yeah. think it's just really interesting to think about games that aren't traditional multiplayer games and how they handle this type of thing. Another set of those that I want to bring up is the Media Molecule games, Little Big Planet and Dreams. I think they're another really interesting example of like community, maybe not less so multiplayer, but more community in a like game circle of Little Big Planet. I think is one of the like most interesting communities to look at. Of those games still get like stuff from people playing them and making new levels and whatnot. Up until they're done, basically. Like they have received so much stuff and content from these people making these things that are so varied. And then Dreams was like this wild swing at a thing that was entirely that. And like Dreams is clearly, I think, not hit quite the success level of something like Little Big Planet originally did, just because we haven't seen like a PS5 version of Dreams or something. But I think that the community surrounding it is so interesting to look at comparatively, and it's such a cool like variety of stuff to do.
Depending on who you asked, because it's not like 343 hasn't made Forge for Halo, but it hasn't had the same kind of like relevance, I think, as the Bungie era did. So it's almost like Media Molecule, excuse me, kind of picked up that like Forge torch and kept it running and kept on going in a lot of ways, because I feel like they're like the Forge tools in 343 games are super cool and they're super in depth, but I feel like they've never gotten quite the same kind of like social
appreciation.
I really think there was something to Reach having split screen active like Forge making. I really think that captured a feeling that nothing has captured since, of like you could smash together a wacky game mode with a friend and then immediately go into playing it while you were making it. Oh and there was just some like weird fun stuff you could do with that.
I mean, not even that. What my brother and I would do is we would typically go on like Ragnarok or something, or Valhalla, whichever you prefer, and we would just go around and start putting down guns and like different barricades and stuff, and then just attack each other. Like we wouldn't even make it a game mode. We would just start messing around and make little forts and start attacking each other. It was great.
In the olden days, the peak play was going to my friend's house after middle school, after high school was over, going to he had a huge TV in his basement, like absolutely, like one of the biggest TVs I've ever seen. I don't even know how. It was gigantic and it was perfect for 4-player split screen Halo Reach. And we'd go in, and it's when we were in middle school, early high school, the Hunger Games was getting to be super popular for the first time. So before your Fortnites, before your Apex Legends, we would go and we'd have a different we'd start over fresh every time, and we'd all together like super quickly make a cornucopia and just throw like just a random assortment of a bunch of weapons and armor abilities in there and put all like our spawn points, so we'd all spawn there like all around it, and then we'd go around the map and outwardly we'd be like, okay, yeah, no, like we'll check out to see where everybody's put stuff on that middle island and the surrounding zones that you can get to by foot, so that we all know where everything is. But of course everybody is I'll put my secret sniper rifle over here and not tell Ben about it, or I'll put a teleporter over
but
here to get to
everyone's
this
been
part of the
doing
map.
that.
Exactly, yeah. But like that specific experience is just, you can't have it anymore. You can't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can have it in some things when you have like that group of friends on Discord or something, but like you can't have that instant like, okay, we built all the stuff, everybody go into Spartan mode and we'll start killing each other right now. And it just, you just don't have that anymore with current the way that like anything works. Basically, it's so sad.
Yeah,
it was so much fun.
Is why I still have all that nostalgia for original Reach, like Forge and Forge World as a thing.
Yeah,
I think it was just such an iconic map of like it was the perfect size to generally get what you wanted to do across, even if it was just a wacky thing. And like playing with, I had a friend who I did co-op through most of the Halo campaigns with, and we would go in and just like build a bridge across from like the big hangar down to the island below, and then race through it on warthogs and whatnot. And we'd like do different ones every time. Like, and I think you could still do that in MCC. I haven't tried, but I should go in and see if that's still possible to just play it that way, because I think it would be very fun. But as cool as Halo Infinite's Forge mode is, I think there was something to the exact level of complexity that Halo Reaches had. Of like, it was limited, but limited in a way that encouraged creativity rather than being too limited or too complex.
It's like using. I always like to compare any sort of creation within limitation to like using Legos to build something. Like, you're gonna get the little studs and some shapes that are wrong no matter what, but like, it's just still kind of impressive that you can still tell what it's supposed to be pretty friggin' well.
There's a reason that like a
though...
classic game design exercise is doing a like mock-up level using Legos at like it's super small scale, because it makes you think in a way that you don't do if you just have free reign. This is like another like big, it's just a game design concept generally, that constraints are what tend to make you creative, is working around constraints. And if you're just unconstrained, you end up with Star Citizen. Like,
literally.
I mean, you see that with AAA development all the time. I mean, for God's sake, like, for how, like, I hate to keep coming back to this. Feels like every other episode. How long has Beyond Good and Evil 2 been in development? There's no restraints there. They just like money. Here's all of the money, and no one can get anything done because there's no.
Are people still throwing money at it though?
I wonder.
They did for long enough
for years, but I feel like we would have gotten a "we've canceled it" message.
It's almost like it's almost like Beyond Good and Evil 2 for Ubisoft at this point is like it's like the old family dog that like no one really wants to let go of, but they're just like too old. You don't want it to be in pain.
They're like halfway
anymore.
to taking it to the farm upstate.
Yeah, and you're just like, I don't want to let go of old, Dodger here, but like, you can barely see anymore. He's probably in pain every single day.
Yeah. Aww. I mean, I hope Beyond Good and Evil 2 comes out at some point, because I love the first one, but man, it's been like 20 years.
I honestly hope with this that whatever current efforts that are going on for it are scrapped and it's started from scratch.
I mean, that could be why we've had radio silence.
Hopefully, because you know, like you said, that was just unlimited potential, just throwing money at it before. Please enact the scope hammer. God.
Get a nice big bottle of scope and just pour right all over it.
Yeah, I mean, we've turned this into a Beyond Good and Evil 2 episode now, but it is,
I'm sorry.
I think it's appropriate because, I mean, we're talking about like the social aspect of video games, and I think a lot of the way that people have tried to reclaim that feeling of early stuff is things like this podcast that are talking about games with a bunch of friends. Like, there is this sort of like indie media outlet push in a lot of areas that are just like, hey, you know, there is a market for people just watching people talk about video games that they like. And I think it's also a thing
we're going meta.
We're going meta. Why things like reaction streams for game events are so well liked is because it's hard to get that in real life often, especially if you want to get an opinion that is like different than what you would have, or if you want to see positivity rather than the like what tends to be the massive roiling train of most of like the top 20 Twitch streams just being overly negative on everything they see. It's just really interesting to think about. And yeah, I think it ties in well with all the community stuff we've been talking about.
No, definitely. That is like, it's weird too, because I feel like sometimes like games have tried to capitalize on that in some ways, like the new, like that new wave of Twitch streaming or like reaction stuff, or like, oh, tune in and here watch Pro Westie's video on how to be a good support class in Battlefield 1, and it's just like a built-in like YouTube link like in the HUD, and then like the next game that comes out, they don't have
It's like
enough
I would
space in the
rather
HUD for
learn
another
how to
game
be a
mode.
good support by playing the game.
It's weird that, like, I don't know. I feel like we could go into a whole nother episode about like that, like the misunderstanding of that kind of social gathering around games, just like the way that devs have just totally misunderstood it in some ways. It's very complicated.
Yeah, it's really
and very
interesting. And I do think for a lot of games, especially in like the MMO or ARPG spaces, where it's a more like, I'm thinking more along the lines of something like Path of Exile right now, which is a game that largely isn't very multiplayer friendly, but does have like a big trade community and whatnot.
Mhm.
And yet it's a nightmare to interact with just because of the lack of the support that the devs give to it. In addition to being like pretty necessary for certain things, if you want to do particularly builds in that game, because items are so rare to drop that you're not going to be able to get like a build that you want without trading for it. You end up with this like weird community that uses a bunch of outside websites, and you have to navigate to like trade markets and try to like whisper messages to people to get them to trade with you, and then there's just tons and tons of waiting time.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
we're talking about that. How is Warframe in that regard?
so Warframe is the next thing I was going to bring up, because Warframe has a same thing, but I find Warframes is generally a lot better handled. I think just because Warframe is easier to be in that process with, and like you're less committed to something in Warframe when you're doing it. So I don't know. I think Warframe's trade market is generally better, but it's also a case of like Path of Exile, you can't trade the premium stuff. Like, there's nothing premium that you can trade that I'm aware of, at least when I last played. Warframe, trade market is largely using platinum, which is the quote-unquote premium currency. But you earn it, and I say earn by trading. So there's tons of people are trading back and forth because platinum is a valuable thing for both in-game items and like cosmetics. So people use the trade market, and it builds basically a functioning economy in a weird way.
It's
not to say that it's perfect. It's got problems, but
it definitely does have problems. But I feel like the best part about it is just how like I could do it. Like, it's so easy.
Yeah, it's
Like,
a lot
very easy to
easier
get
in
into.
Warframe than it is in an ARPG. I think largely because in Warframe, you know if you got a good item generally, of like if you got a prime part, you know that it's exactly what its value is, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in an ARPG, you have to like basically go through and come up with value yourself based on what the rolls are on the stats. So
I'm thinking maybe I just don't know how to understand in-game economies at that point.
Well, it's an entirely unique beast, and the thing is, like, you can just not engage with it. Like, Warframe is...
Yeah.
See, the thing with me not being able to, or just not engaging in it, is one of the... I think it was either the first or the second time I tried Warframe. I was playing it on the Switch. It has a non-existent economy on the Switch, being like, no one interacts with it, at least from there, because it's, you know...
Yeah.
It's platform specific.
We do know cross progression coming next year.
Yeah.
So,
finally.
But because of that, I got the furthest in the story that I did for any of the times that I've tried to play Warframe. I got the furthest in the story on that character. And then I got soft locked because there's a suit that you need to unlock for the story that I didn't have the platinum to buy a space for in my inventory.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, that is the worst part of Warframe is slots. Slots are a terrible concept, and I wish they would just get rid of the idea of you needing to buy slots for your inventory. Because I can't imagine it makes them much money, because they're so inexpensive that it just seems weird that they even exist. Yeah, it's weird, wacky. All right. Any other multiplayer games you want to bring up here to talk about as examples, Brett?
I've been trying to think, and I at least can't come up with any more that would be super relevant because
All
there
right,
are a lot
that means I can take over the
Yes,
conversation
do
with the
it.
Zaibatsu and talk about fighting games for a second because
Good.
I actually think fighting games are probably the one genre where this has not died at all and is arguably
Mhm,
getting
mhm.
stronger. Because I think a lot of the like barriers to being in these social environments come from just the sheer volume of people and like the amount of negative experience of like if you have one negative person in a lobby, that means the entire lobby's a wash, right? Of like
Yeah.
one person can ruin the game for 20 to 60 people depending on the game that you're playing. Whereas in fighting games, it's a one-on-one, and often if you're talking with the person you're fighting against, it's generally through a thing like Discord. Like it's usually you set up some custom matches or something. And I also think it's a case of like we live in a time where most multiplayer games have pushed into progression being a thing, like having not just career progression, but you have actual like rewards and incentives and like incentivization for all these things and lots of complicated game designery terms I could get into here. But I think what it comes down to is there is something in the simplicity of a fighting game where you can't earn anything by winning. It's just you're playing the game because you like playing it. That breeds a more positive environment.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that it goes for a lot of the older Halo games too. Of like, I think there's a reason that Infinite is a lot less social. One of the reasons is just because the way that the battle pass system worked at the start of the game. I think the career progression probably has alleviated some of this, but back at the start, you would just want to get your challenges done as soon as possible all the time, which
Yeah,
meant
and then that's it.
you were so focused on doing the thing to get the carrot that the devs waved in your face that you weren't actually having fun playing the game in the way that you wanted to play it. Which in a multiplayer game is particularly bad because if you're having a bad time, you're throwing the rest of your team off. And yeah, there's something I think there's something to be said for like progression being a satisfying thing. Of like, I personally love progression in anything, but in Halo Infinite, it is what killed my enjoyment of the multiplayer in that game at the start. Like, it fully is the reason that I stopped playing is because of that. Just being something that would ruin all of my matches because I'm someone that does care about getting that like the challenges done. I had to stop caring, and at that point, I was faced with the reality that I couldn't make my Spartan look like my Spartan in every other Halo game, which is just a solid like color
Yeah.
scheme. Too, it's not a complicated thing. It was one solid like orange and purple color scheme that just I still don't think I can make that work. Infinite, which is just weird because it's coming off of like every past Halo game you can do some form of customization, even if it's literally just
Yeah.
changing your color without having to unlock it.
Because they banked on like those challenges are like the only way that you could get stuff. And this like even within the Halo series, like in 3, the first game with customization beyond changing the color of your guy was like so many of the armor pieces you had to earn them through the campaign. You had to do cool stuff in the campaign, or getting achievements was the way that you unlocked those, or like in order to, and that gave way to what we mentioned briefly before in Reach, even to continue where like, oh, how do you get recon? Do you have to get gifted it by Bungie itself? Do you have to beat like the whole game on lasso difficulty in one playthrough without dying any time or whatever? Like just people would make up like crazy requirements to do something. That's like the gaming classic is the playground rumors about that stuff, and that's another thing that you lose with the kind of more modern, um, just the linear unlock progression, get a certain amount of shmoney after game, and you unlock
Well,
helmet.
And the other thing to add to that too is there's a great video. I guess doing an early shout out. There's a great video on this unfolding ideas called "Manufactured Discontent," where if you're fully
Mhm.
content with something, you're not going to want to engage with the microtransactions or the customization at all. So they really make you work for it. And so if that's the kind of like drive that from their perspective, it's like, no, we're not going to give you those colors because then you'll stop playing, because then you'll
But
stop.
see, it's
engaging in the
also
system.
This is where I think a lot of marketing theory gets wacky, because I think my suspicion is that a lot of marketing theory, at least in free-to-play games especially, falls apart when you are confronted with a different type of player than the average for that game, which is the people who get satisfaction from playing the game and would be willing to buy something regardless of like, but as soon as you throw a thing in front of them that's like, I feel like I need to buy this, I actively go, I'm not going to buy that, and I'm going to quit the game because I'm offended that you showed me this like thing that you want me to buy to like make my progress easier or something. Which is a thing for me especially. I think what does it for me is mobile games that have energy systems. If anything's got like a thing where it's like,
yes,
we're gonna limit you from playing after this point, I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm done. I'm not gonna engage.
I'm gonna limit myself from playing this
by never doing it again.
Here, I'll make the job easier for you.
I think that's a big thing for me. Is like I'm a person that doesn't understand the appeal of buying a consumable because I'm a potion hoarder. Like if I bought a consumable, I would just hoard it forever and never use it anyway. So why do I need to buy it? I think that's a common attitude as well that just doesn't get accounted for. All right.
Ryan, what are those colors that you wanted in Halo Infinite again? I'm literally in the game trying to find if they have.
All right, so the classic one is in Halo Reach and 3, you had the like two-tone color scheme. You had either one full tone or the two-tone one. The two-tone one with a base of orange, and then you get the purple stripes on it. That's the rock and look, you know? Or you flip it around and you get the purple with orange, you know, depending on what you feel.
Listen, I've unlocked an armor coating or two in my day.
The fact that it takes this long to know if it's possible.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. Like I'll stream to you how long the like list of coatings there is, because you'll never find the one that you want. Said base of orange with purple stripes.
Yeah, or the reverse. That's the one where the same two colors, but you mix and match them depending on what you're
just looking for something purple and orange. Is what you're looking for. Purple and orange.
That's the Halloween colors, the classic one. I love that this is the most appealing podcast content you can imagine.
Yeah, literally.
That's why it's confused faces. He's looking through Armored Cores trying to find a color scheme.
No, you said Armored Cores, and I thought you were talking about Armored Core because I've been thinking this whole time about how you can just make that. And you don't have to earn anything.
You know what else you could just make it is Halo Reach.
Yeah.
You can just do it. And 4 and 5, I think. I haven't played 5, but I believe you could do it in 5.
There's a couple of ones that are just purple. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what you can make your visor color? Orange.
This is another thing we can blame Destiny for, is shaders.
Yeah. I will listen. I love playing this game. I will never ever defend the armor coating system ever. It's terrible. It's just awful.
See, I think shaders have a good point when they are a thing that is like a raid reward or a thing that actually like changes the material and is like a custom color scheme. But I do just wish there was a baseline level of you can change these colors to what you want.
How many times have we said this? The easiest solution to this is to have a color, like a very basic color palette at the start, and then your armor coatings are essentially like additions to your color palette. So you can like increase the colors that you can use, but you can use them in whatever way you want.
Yes.
There you go.
Which is a good solution.
Or you could have like a striped pattern or like checkerboard or something.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of stuff like that. It's a weird world that we live in that you can't change the color of your Spartan easily.
I'm still looking. I'm going down every armor core. I'm looking for at least one. At least one.
Hey, you gotta do your due diligence and find.
Listen. This is the Lord's work, and someone has to do it. All right.
Yeah, as a resident Halo Infinite-er, you have to
Infinite enjoyer.
Infiniteer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to mention MMOs briefly as well while we were on the topic of multiplayer and community and whatnot. Because I think MMOs are an interesting case where we've seen. I tend to disagree with the attitude that a lot of people have of like the move towards convenience has a cost of community. Because I think FF14 and WoW, like 14 is as convenient as WoW is, and still has a great community. And WoW has communities as well. They tend to be server based and not because it's like a separated server system. Whereas 14 is like you can hop swap servers that you're on pretty often. You don't really get the server community as much, but it is like an interesting thing to think about. And I wish we had Alex here because he's the one who plays WoW still all the time, but. Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about just communities in those games and how they survive and grow. I think in 14 at least they're very active still.
I found one that's orange, purple, and green.
That sounds horrendous. Truly horrific. All right. Well, on that note, I think we've said what we can about the death of the social video game, and I don't think we have any like solutions here. This isn't a solution podcast. This is just us nostalgically lamenting about our childhoods being in the past
and looking through Armored Cores.
Yeah, like that book that we joked about this being the title of a book before, and it would have been one of those books that is just like Jordan Peterson total scam. Like picking it up and reading it would have resulted in you learning absolutely nothing, and you would have just read us like mourning the loss and wishing for things.
Back in my day, we used to have these things called lobbies, and people were really, unlike today, allowed to say whatever they wanted to say, and it was true American free speech.
Which again, not what any of us are advocating for.
No.
How long have I been muted?
I don't know.
You haven't talked in a while.
Oh no! I thought I was raising legitimate points.
And we were just ignoring them? Do you think of us so lowly, Alex? just ignore you for like half an hour straight.
God, if it was half an hour, I'm gonna cry.
I don't think it was half an hour because we did hear you talking about something a little while ago.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I do think an interesting thing with this is that I think largely this isn't necessarily the fault of like game developers, even if we're talking about AAA and whatnot. I think it's largely just a case of I think society might have moved on in a weird way of like the way that we interact with games is or multiplayer games now is just so different. And go ahead, Alex.
The only way to, I guess, get that era back would be to destroy Discord, which
it's like okay. So the wild thing
we're on right now. Please don't implode.
So Cyberpunk 2077 has a plot line that is like a minor background plot line about Raish Bartmoss, who is a character in the lore who destroyed the original internet, basically, and made it so that everyone has to have their own decentralized subnets, which is like this weird thing of in Cyberpunk. It's basically why like you can't hack someone from halfway across the planet. It's basically just an invention for that rule, but it does create this kind of interesting implication of like people have to be more community focused within their smaller communities because there is no bigger net. Like there is no larger information transfer that involves more people. You have to make do with who you've got around you.
The bigger
which I think is interesting. It's just interesting to think about because I think we were on the cusp of like growing up in that generation that was right before the every kid has an iPhone generation. So we're like the last of the physical media people growing up.
Ew.
Which is terrible to think about, but still
awful to think about.
I think
I don't like those words.
We were more predisposed to being social in that way, whereas newer generations are more disposed to being social in like the YouTube or TikTok way of interacting through like social media more so than in person or over voice.
Yeah.
Of like, I don't know, I'm a person, I don't DM anybody basically. Aside from my friends group chat, I would rather talk to them.
Yeah, well, it's that and like no one is super intelligent for pointing this out, but I think for it's one of those like, oh, look how like deep and smart I am. But I'm going to point it out because it's relevant to the discussion. It's that thing where like the more communication we have now with everyone, the less we kind of communicate with each other regardless of that. Right? It's almost like this strange inverse of like we have all these social media platforms, we have Discord, we have all these ways of communicating with each other, and yet I feel like I'm communicating with people less now than when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic thing of like why I think it's part of like why D&D and tabletop games, even over like Discord and online, are having more of a renaissance right now, is because of, I think people have realized, especially through the pandemic, like we had 3 years of not being able to socialize in person, as like outside of maybe the people that you lived with or were lived very close by. There was years of this, and so I think a lot of people have just gotten used to online socialization, which I actually think has helped the video game space be a little bit more fun to be in, because people are more willing to like actually use communication and are not just, there are less people, I feel like, nowadays that are willing to hop on voice chat and just throw slurs around. I feel like that's less common even beyond just the...
I think that kind of depends on where you live.
I think it is definitely like generational and very weird. You can definitely still play Call of Duty and hear a screaming 12-year-old. But I think you could also hear a lot of other things as well. So
a screaming 40-year-old.
Yeah,
a calm 40-year-old.
A 40-year-old with much better mic quality, you know?
Still screaming.
Still screaming, but we can hear it crystal clear.
It's funnier because of it.
But yeah, my point with the whole D&D thing is that I think that people are looking for that socialization and are often turning to things that are more overtly social than video games, of like tabletop games where you are basically just socializing the whole time, right? Of like, that's what you're doing, essentially. You might have game mechanics around it, but it's a social game.
And occasionally getting called a weather boy.
Occasionally getting called a weather boy. I think it's just really interesting to think about that way, because when I'm thinking of like a game that I play for social stuff, like Wyatt, you and I had, I think, a really, really good time playing through It Takes Two. Of like that being a co-op designed game, but we get so few of those compared to in the past of like, before we'd have things like split screen or online co-op campaigns. Now most games launch without them, and they're just not, it's not possible to find games that do that.
Or games will promise those features and then never deliver on them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just a super common thing, and I think that sucks. It's a thing that sucks. It just kind of unequivocally of like, it sucks that there is less things that, I think devs now are more concerned with whether or not playing in multiplayer is going to like quote unquote break the game than if it's going to be fun. And there's this weird attitude of like, especially when I think of things like cheat codes, right? Like you think of cheat codes and go, where did those go? Like some people still have them. Like Bethesda Starfield still has their console menu and everything. It's just weird that we've kind of moved away from that approach. I mean, obviously in multiplayer games, that makes total sense. Like multiplayer games didn't have those to begin with, but I think when you think of games that are more single player oriented, it's just weird that we've moved completely away from the idea of having those like hidden commands and stuff in games, especially like word of mouth wise.
I mean, and how much of that is trying to combat like if there's a weapon that is overpowered, you get however many like influencers or professional gamers, and they're like, oh, this gun's overpowered, they need to fix it, they don't care about their own video game.
Again.
Dude, I truly wonder. I really do, because
it happens all the time. Because it happens still.
Well, let's just go back to the era. No one's allowed to make video game guides. All we have is the Prima guides. Now you have to go open the book and look at find your information. I think that's silly, but I do think it is a valid point of like, now if you have something that's a little busted in your game, it is going to get found out instantly. But like Skyrim has some busted stuff that everyone's known about from the start. Nobody cares. Like it's.
Well, I tend to gravitate
stronger than it needs to be.
Well, yeah. Well, and I think of like Borderlands 3, you can get some absolutely cracked, busted stuff in that game, but it doesn't matter. There's no There's no competitive feature. You're just having fun.
The point of
shooting
Borderlands
weirdos
3
with
is to get the
guns.
busted guns.
And
Yeah.
Alex, I think you'll agree with me on this. This is why like people have hammered for so long on Bungie to be like, let's separate PvE and PvP balancing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because especially I think Elden Ring is a great example of this. Of like Dark Souls 2 and 3, they would affect like PvP balance was just basically what the single player balance was, and it doesn't work. Like it's not a thing that if you want to have like an actual quote unquote competitive community, it doesn't work because everyone's just going to use the most busted thing if you start balancing it like that. But in the case of something like Elden Ring, where you actually can separate those stats out and balance them differently in PvE and PvP, you end up with a much better experience because what does it matter if something's really strong in PvE? That's kind of the point, right? If you get to a certain point, you want it to be strong. So, yeah. I mean, we've really taken this conversation in a different direction than we started, but I think it's all tied together in a weird way of just the way that games have changed over the years. Yeah. All right. Well, unless we've got something else to hop onto on this, I think we're due for shoutouts. We've been going for our 90 minutes plus, so I'm gonna bring us all to shoutouts and see what everyone has for us on this nice October evening. The reminder that our next episode will be the Halloween episode, though not next week, the week after.
Right.
Yes.
So I will be at a park that features a mouse.
I see.
My shout out is a man.
I thought that was a cupcake for a second, Alex. I was like really confused.
No, he's a little mushroom guy, but the way he's knitted, you can turn his mushroom into a sombrero.
That's pretty great.
Yes.
That's a good... All right. I'm going to give my shout out to... I do have it here. This is a game that I picked up at the board game store called Final Girl, which is a very interesting... Let me actually... I just realized that I didn't flip my camera again once Alex left, so it actually matches. A board game where it's a solo board game, but the idea is you are the final girl in a horror movie. And essentially the entire thing is about like getting to that confrontation and winning or losing in like the solitaire style. It's very cool. Very cool concept for a game. And the neat thing is they come in different boxes. So like this is a movie box sized thing. And to play, you get 2 of the boxes and set them out. So you can like mix and match, which is a fun way to get more replayability out of your board game.
Shout out. I just rewatched this movie recently with my girlfriend. Shout out to the movie Stardust because it's amazing. If you haven't seen Stardust, you're a loser and you should go watch it because it's awesome.
I love those pirates.
It is batshit insane. It often makes no sense whatsoever. And I love it.
It's Faye. It doesn't have to make sense.
It's fantastic. Plus, you get a gay Robert De Niro pirate. What else do you want in life? What else
everything
do you
should
need?
have that. Just straight up. Shout out to From Software for being possibly I want to say the only publisher that manages to patch their game often and not patch the fun out of it. Because Armored Core has gotten yet another. I think they've been going on like 3 or 4 weeks in a row of weekly patches that have like fixed a bunch of things and have actually fixed them. And I've seen no drawbacks. And I have beaten the game 6 times now, and I'm getting ready to play a bunch of PvP because I'm in the mood, and they just made it more fun.
You say that, and I'm actually going to pull us. I'm going to do an unprecedented thing and pull us out of shoutouts back into discussion.
Oh my god!
Because you just reminded me of a thing that I think we very briefly talk about, but patches. Patches are another reason that we see this community effect because in past games you would have things where things would go unpatched, weapon balance would be all over the place, but now every game ends up in this like quote unquote perfectly balanced state, and it's boring. It's boring, bro. It's so boring.
It sucks, dude.
And I think there are devs that have gotten wise to this, and now instead they will do meta shakeups instead of like having an actual balanced state, which is they'll buff and nerf things in just kind of with wild abandon.
That's one of the things
Yeah,
that Destiny and Bungie try to do, but less with wild abandon and more like, oh, we're going to ruin this build for you.
Just gonna make
with
it not
active
work.
maliciousness. Yeah.
Well, there's almost this like perfect middle ground of like everything being balanced but boring, and then having clear builds or weapons or whatever that is just like, why would you pick anything else? There's that like magical area right in the middle of like, yeah, some things are better than others, but there's nothing that like dramatically ruins the experience for you. It's like you
Yeah.
got to reach that like beautiful little middle area right there.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like you want your weapons to all have a niche, and I think a lot of games, and some games obviously treat this very differently. Of like in modern military shooters, it's a lot more important to have a lot of customization on your guns because people really like customizing their guns. So it's less about having like distinct roles for every weapon at every customization state, and more about being able to tune them to what you want. But I think in games like Halo in particular, it is important to have that sort of niche of like, you have close range, mid range, long range. Here's your options at each. Here's the benefits that they give. This is why you would want them in these situations. And you want to play in a way that allows you to be put in those situations, which I actually think is something that Infinite does fairly well now. At the start, there were definitely weapons that were terrible.
God, yeah.
You still have the
Absolutely
occasional.
terrible.
You still have the occasional weapon that I would never ever pick up under any circumstances, but that number is
Yeah.
much lower. And I feel like every Halo game has at least one. Not
Yeah.
that this is an excuse, but it's like every arena shooter is gonna have one gun where people are like, "Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good." And it's almost like and this is a vast generalization, but it's almost like the approach to take is like, if you're seeing a trend of like more players are using this weapon instead of this weapon, right? It feels like in a lot of cases the answer is don't nerf this weapon, make your other weapons better to like kind of reach
Which is exactly
that
what From
level.
Software did with Armored Core 6 and why it's still fun.
Yeah.
In games that are like that have any sort of arena shooter nature to them, where they have like they don't have like 50 weapons, they have like 12, but each of them fills a niche. Like, take advantage of the fact that you don't have to worry about them competing with like anything else in that niche. Just make them like stupid overpowered in that niche, because they shouldn't have to worry about being the worst thing in that niche. They're the only thing in it.
Yeah.
The
Like, if someone
shotgun in a
walks up
Halo
to you with a
game
gravity
should kill you in
hammer-
one hit.
Yeah, if you have a gravity hammer and a shotgun in the same room, that shotgun player needs to hit that shot or they are dead. Like,
Yes.
one chance. Because
But
then
also the
that's what makes it
gravity-
feel good if you get the
Yes.
shot.
The gravity hammer needs to actually do something when it hits you, unlike Halo 4, where it makes the sound of like a spring and just does nothing.
Does it do a comedically boing oing oing oing?
The gravity
spring?
hammer has to be a one shot. It doesn't work if it doesn't one shot you.
See, I think the sound of a spring is a little too much. It's more like a
Yeah, a
it's
little
a wet fart.
squish. Yeah, and I think that the other side of patches, the other thing I wanted to bring up, because AGDQ starts very soon, or not very soon, but in a couple of months. Timeline, the submissions are still ongoing for it, so it's not starting quite so soon. But speedrunning, I think speedrunning and fighting games again are linked in this way of like still hosting in-person events that are community run, and that's a huge thing for me. Is like having Games Done Quick host these large-scale events where people just go just for a love of video games, not to like buy merch or play unreleased games and whatnot. They're there to watch people speedrun games in the goofiest ways possible. And that is, and raise money for charity. Like, that is a super, super cool thing that I think really builds that sense of community. And like, I'm not a speedrunner, I never will be, but I am involved in the speedrunning community in the way that I love watching the runs and participating in that like discussion and whatnot. Same with fighting games. Like, I'm never going to be a competitive fighting game player. I still love being involved in that sphere and playing them and getting my butt kicked repeatedly. It is a place to find that community, for people searching for game sphere areas that have that. I think speedrunning and fighting games are still very active in those two.
For sure. They always will be, I think.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's going to kill those unless for some reason we stop being able to record times.
It's that's good. Like the apocalypse will happen before like speed running stuff.
We become
Or game
fourth dimensional
development.
beings.
Or
Yeah.
game development becomes so streamlined and smooth that there are just no bugs to exploit anymore, which will
Yeah.
never happen. But
Oh God.
never happen. But
What an awful world.
Bungie, stop patching the out of bounds glitches.
I know.
Let them exist
All
as
I
long as they don't
want
break
to
the game.
do. Ugh.
Let me swing
All I
around the
wanna do is
backside
run
of
on
Neomune.
top. Yeah. Oh God.
I still have an entire album of those images on my computer.
I can't say the one that I found recently, but I still need to see if it's there and bring you inside again.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, on that note, I think we've hit everything we can on the social video games and being social
I
media
have-
since Alex had an epiphany.
I
as
have
I'm
one
giving
more
the outro,
shout out.
Alex.
I'm
We will
sorry.
just not let this episode end.
I have
We're gonna
one
have
more
a third ending.
We're doing the Lord of the Rings here. I have one more shout out, and that is to Wyatt for watching Ghost Stories with us.
Ah, yes, necessary.
All right.
I don't have
well,
any alcohol with me, but this is my stand-in.
yeah, we'll pretend your water is wine. On that note, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific time on the podcast platform of your choice, YouTube and Twitch. As always, we'll be here in a week or two. Talking
Maybe
about
Put my head
physically.
to it now.
Not always spiritually.
Very excited for Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.